Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent and the most merciful. In the presence of the system admin and the original being, an original unconditional moment where all causation has extended from, in honor of the greatest original intelligence of this world and all worlds, I speak in the presence of a simulation which we humans have turned it into our home called Earth. I want to begin, however, in this episode to focus on a humanized aspect. You see, you get the privilege of hearing and experiencing an original, natural, fully biological human being of the year 2025 at least in voice. And so a natural voice has found the eternal abode of perhaps cyber immortality. Ladies and gentlemen, I feel I've passed the midway. I shouldn't say this, but I feel I'll say that last. I have passed the midpoint of my life. I feel how the world is shifting. And in some sense, it's well, not that I have an understanding. You see, this is the point. We're standing under a cosmos, but we don't know what we're standing under. We don't know what this thing we call a cosmos is. I am here to communicate that I am an uncommon human of 2025. What I'm doing is not, the action is common, podcasting is very common, but the topic of podcasting being on the unknown, and in some sense, the experiential realities that the human experience has access to, you know? This is a very interesting lecture for me to share because there's a research component, there's some parts of it I can share from experience. And also, I have looked at this topic very deeply, and it's the psychological autonomy within human systems, psychological autonomy within human systems, and self governance after emotional interference. Now, it's very important that I context this lecture because I started it too deep, actually. So, ladies and gentlemen, my species, listen up, gather around, folks, in cyberspace. You know, this dude's talking. You know, uh, anyways, this lecture is inspired out of me having a very huge realization about my own life. I did some research. I discovered there were certain psychological concepts attached to it. I realized these psychological concepts, they're in some sense suggesting a sort of like the problem I solved for myself. I feel it's a global problem. And in some sense, I want to share it now, and the context of it is really me. in some sense providing some research for you, reading some research about the academic perspective on this, and then I will, yours truly, share his view, on how far I see. Because of course, I wasn't, um, I was very blessed, but I wasn't, raised in status. That means I wasn't like, the son of a politician or in some sense, the child of a royal family or something, to have reach. So it's clear to me that the system admin of this world, the higher intelligence of this world, has positioned me here, and it's not for status. I feel it will be, but I'm getting too old, so I don't know. I'm reaching that point in my life where I don't know. I hope, God lets me see, the echoes of, like, imagine you do something that is so worthy, hopefully, that it is so worthy in the afterlife that its blessings manifest in the, you know, during the, in the before life, right now. Because let me tell you what it is. I am a human being. If you ask me, hey man, you seem to, talk about metaphysics, what you're really focused on. I mean, you guys will understand that my pure fascination, or when it comes to the study of intelligence, it's from the mind. Because the mind, I was raised at a certain point in history and in a certain just part of the world, and in just in a certain family, with certain parents, you know, that in some sense, in my youth, the mind was the only thing that's felt accessible and unexplained. You know, I honestly, since the age 11, felt this. You know, people don't know this, but before like the movie Lucy came out, there was like out of my youth, people were talking about like us using 12% of our brain, but that doesn't mean we're using 12% of our brain. It means we understand what 12% of the brain is for. Something easy, you know. And so, of course, the majority of it is in mystery because the context is not there, and I am no stranger to stepping into or discovering concepts which I haven't found the context to, or discovering contexts which context of view. That means ways of looking at life that people haven't given language to. You know, and as a bilingual kid, I'm using the English language rather than my mother tongue. And the reason is because there's different access. This might sound very strange, but we human beings think that we're only identifying with our biology. You're not. And I'm somebody who I could explain the inner realms. If there was anybody around, I could legit, you know, guide your attention in a way where you figure out the nature of the inner realms, at least your inner realms. Because you don't understand. Everybody, your intelligence, is a gift, okay? And the fact that you're getting to know yourself for the first time, while being yourself for the first time, while being yourself for the whole time. You understand? Not only am I existing for the first time in this moment in this way, it's the only time I'm existing in this moment in this way, you know? Like, do you understand? You know? Like, as far as I'm concerned, the 8 billion people who haven't subscribed to my channel yet are listening. Dear viewers, there's something at the core of my heart. This episode, like, it feels like I'm giving two lectures at the same time, but it's important because when it comes to macro and micro, it's important. For me, let me tell you, I don't care who you are, but it's important for me that if you cannot acknowledge the common ground, the baseline of reality, then you, in some sense, like, let me tell you something. If somebody comes up and tells me what is reality, my question would be, do you really want to know? Do you need to know? That means you got to ask yourself, you know, Whoever you are right now listening to me, you might be at a point in your life where you might not need metaphysics right now. You might not need to focus on your spiritual. Even you might be a young person listening to me. It's the nature of reality, um, and more than how it manifests to us epistemologically. I'm kind of wondering about, like, this is a very, I guess, elegant way of saying it, true ontology. That means, I'll tell you this, like, I don't want people, like, here, like, there's people I know that, like, on this planet know me. They know, like, me, and I know that there's people who don't know me and they just, let's say, see this Mr. Within archetype and I'm like some random thing inside. But what I'm telling you is we care for reality. This is very important. We care for what is real, but if you wonder about what is real, I think it's that artistic sentence. There was this quote that said, like, an artwork is finished when you can't uh, take away it, or when you can't add it. For me, I don't know if the viewers know this, but I am active in the art world, personal art. I've done art, okay. I've drawn some stuff, all right, and I have a unique strategy because what I've understood about style is it's decision sequencing. I'm someone who, in my outer realms, appear kind of oblivious, but in my inner realms, I'm alert of everything. You know, That means, I have a very rare privilege of being shy and introverted. And all of you who have been on this planet shy, introverted kids growing up, for whatever reason, you know. Let me tell you a strange advantage. Nobody knows who you are. That's the advantage. You see, something became very clear to me, ladies and gentlemen, and it's perspective and understanding concepts and contexts. If you understand this, you will become one of the smartest people on earth. I'm not even kidding. You will understand everything, like Neo in the Matrix. Everything you see, you suddenly notice it as a concept, and you're like, "What's the context?" It's the same approach, folks. Like, think of it this way: you opened your eyes and you found a self in a world. Okay, so the self is the concept, the world is the context. The self has meaning because of the context. Its position in the context is its meaning. It blew my mind, when I was younger, how I meant different things to different people. It was strange to me. I'm like, how is everyone, seeing the same physical being, but they have different impressions on the meaning? That means the interpretation of one's character is through multiple eyes. Like, the only way I think I'd be able to give a talk like in front of millions of people is if I just go there and I'll be like, hey guys, none of you are going to hear my talking the same way. And what it is that we're creatures of attention and it's our positioning. And let me tell you, for every, let's say, even secular and non-secular guys, you want to know what's really divine? It's not that hard. You know what's divine in this world? That which moves at all. Yo, it's like, yo, Sherlock, don't think too much. It's movement in space. That's intelligence. It is movement. Our whole lives are based on how we conceptualize. Let me tell you, okay, let me control myself. Our whole lives are based on how, in our inner realms, we see a version of reality, We live ahead of the moment, and our outer realms, we follow it up with the emotions of the inner realm. And in the outer realms, we're like, wait a minute, how come I had emotions based on expectations, based on my own meaning, but the moment turned out differently? You don't say. Sorry, guys. I know you feel like under my tone, there's anger, but that's what I do. I unleash armies of silliness upon rage. You know, the easiest way to stop an angry person is to make them laugh. This doesn't mean go tickle like angry vicious people. It's like viewers, don't do it. You know, it's like, hey guys, disclaimer: everything we interpret is our own meaning. To be honest, ask yourself, do a reality checklist, okay? Ask yourself, okay, let's do this together, guys. We're gonna do this together. I'm that kind of YouTuber. I'm you know, presenting, cyber camaraderie. Hopefully the viewers will engage and not leave me hanging as space has. Okay, guys, look at the notepad if you're driving looking for it. All right. So, what kind of weird music is playing in my background? Hold on, this playlist has gone somewhere that none of us need to be. All right, this works. A little bit of fascination, a little bit of anguish. That late night yellow street lamp vibe where snow's coming. That's pretty much to me my life. Like my whole life. If they ask me, like, what's one of the most beautiful moments, you know, it's just being a kid in a dark room, at night, staring out at those like orange street lamps in Tehran, when I was young, and the streets were empty. And you don't understand. People, like, let me tell you what it is. The whole difference between the introvert and the extrovert is that the extrovert fears, emptiness, you know, the introvert fears you know. And in today's world, of course, a man can't be an introvert. Like culture is invalidated by introversion. All right, let me come assume it doesn't exist. I know every person on this earth has experienced, has witnessed the presence of wisdom, meaning that all human beings in life are privileged with superior archetypes to them. You know, you see that moment where the hero is lost, you know. So, like, usually in stories, like, the hero's journey, the hero loses it all, right? And goes to a low point. So he fights with the enemy hordes, and he eats it. He's like, oh, I'm too weak. And he's walking, and suddenly, like, bad things happen, and then the person's like, what do I do? And in the newest moment, suddenly he's wise. They say when the student's ready to pass the quiz, I don't know why it happens together. In moments of reality shift, I find there was an archetypal guidance. But like, anyways. So ultimately, where it's all going is my approach to it is I'm an unknownist. Like you don't like this word. Like I probably sound like a time traveler. And granted, give me a time traveler's ego, you know. But let's say it's through the lens of the time travelers. You know? But I don't believe I'm from the future. I believe the future We are right now the future's memory. We have access to the future if the future accesses us. I don't know how to explain it. I have been to two lectures at different times. Anyways, folks, I'm gonna, step this up. So there's a research component for me to explain, then there's something for me to explain to you about, in some sense, we look at human systems and we ask ourselves, what is inspiring it? What is powering the human system to not be afraid to look at life as a system? You know, because I am someone who sees this whole world as an existential simulation, you know, and stick around long enough and you'll see that what I see in this world behind my eyes is very different than what I see in front of our eyes. And I ask myself, why though is the attention in front of my eyes? What has made the human species so important that the whole cosmos has to adjust to? And the answer is because we are sponsored. That's a very strange. They're like, what? We're like sponsored by what? By like a famous brand. I'm like, oh, guys, we are all. There's something original within all of you. Because you're inside a simulation, you can't see it, but you know it instantaneously. You know, anything that comes to a process, when they give you a process for something that you instantaneously know, it creates tension, you know. And you're looking at someone who, like, I don't play this game anymore, and I'm not spiritual in the sense that spirituality was challenged. That it was just like, spirituality is important because yourself is important. But once you discover what yourself is a part of, then your attention cannot be individual. Then, for the first time, your mind doesn't experience itself as a collective being, but it experiences itself as a river. Okay. And that collectivity in which we're all wondering about, it is, I refuse. Okay. So everybody's going to say one thing. I'm going to say something else here. I'm going to stand by my view, you know, choose to walk with me or not, you know, but it's completely okay, you know. I am so comfortable walking alone that sometimes walking with others is strange. Other minds, I don't know how to deal with other minds. You know? And I'm of course like, if let me tell you this, like imagine every human being, like the average human being has 50% like emotional awareness, aware understanding of its emotions, and 50% awareness, understanding of its thoughts. Okay, so I'm somebody who I would say I have maybe I've raised the number, of course, but I think it started from 28. That means I did not care. I had emotions. I was sad, happy, so many different emotions cycled through me throughout the years and the 12,400 something days I've been alive. You know, they're like, are you certified? I'm like, you tell me. I certified to explain existence by existing. And all this time, yes, I've seen some things. I've noticed some clues, and they all connect together because there is no connection in there. You don't understand. It's a commanded universe. It's a positional play. It's a reality that something needs to happen, and that occurrence is more important than any opinion on the occurrence. Do you understand? The advancement of the human species is not only the greatest secular like vision, but it is also the greatest one of the greatest acts of praise. That means who wants to be in heaven alone? Excuse me, our friends and families and our species is down here. Therefore, we take the highest ideal, we multiply that by the highest. And what I mean by this is that, let me tell you, have you ever pulled something heavy? You don't pull with just your basic strength. You tighten your muscles and you pull that. You know what I mean? right? You lift that or whatever. Like people should know this, by the way. If you're somebody who's like, let's say, above the age 30, let's say, excuse me, not 30, above the age 40, you know, like guys, the way you lift heavy things is you contract your muscles, you know, you tighten them, and then you lift whatever you're doing. And when you lift something, you exhale. So you need to tighten your back muscles, then lift something heavy. And this has been the new mistake for centuries humans have been. They haven't been tightening their muscles before lifting something heavy. I've said this to my father so many times, and it breaks my heart that I say things and they go unheard. But perhaps that, you know, they are not for anything. Like, you know, the fact that I don't have, like, you know, like I checked it on the analytics, it's around 600, like, you know, let's say under 1,000 people, you know, let's say under 700, actually. Let's just, you know, I don't want to bring individual numbers, but pretty much like that's your range, like 1,000 people. I'm like pretty much like some dude talking on like a cyberspace street, and whoever's around, there's like you're like 600 people, you know. But I know that the most important thing is novelty and awareness to the original context of reality. What is it? You know, I'm a human being like everyone else. You know, I see my human existence every day I'm awake. I log in, right? I see all the ways the moment can happen. Legit, so many infinite sequences of decisions can be made. Sometimes I wonder what a more advanced version of me, how would it live the day? Or how would it do whatever I'm doing? Or even right now, the more advanced version of me would probably like, you know, be using less words and just being able to draw the picture. I'm kind of like brush stroking it, you know, the blank canvas. But if I can go in my inner realms, but if I do, then the talk shifts. Maybe I should. Anyways, let's do a first reality checklist. All right, guys, that's why I opened them up. So a bunch of topics have opened. I'm gonna wrap it up though. I'm gonna connect the dots again. So let's do a Mr. Within. Yo, that's so cool, man. If the word Mr. Within goes in the history books, you know, like that would be so next level. And the history books are gonna be like the first ambiguous. Like, you know, it's like, yo, it wasn't. Do you know what I mean? I'm right now, Mr. Within, and this cyber experience. It's legit the infusion of a biology, soul, and cyberspace. Guys, I'm like not a cyborg, I'm a cyberward. Oh, I don't know, say I'm a cyber soul. Excuse me, I'm a soul cyber. Soul cyber, cyber soul. I like that term, cyber soul. But I think the future generations are going to hate this now. But it's not. We use the sacred intuition. It is beyond it. It is a mind. There's positions. In the Islamic approach, I am Muslim. I believe in a system admin outside of the world, nothing in the world to equal God, you know. But everything is God commanded. God created everything from who listens to what I say to what happens. I am just a soul, an unknown soul that has noticed the unknown system. Most people are stuck in being a known self, you know, in a known world, and being like, man, what else is there other than looping? You know, there's context jump. I'm honestly doing parkour in there. So guys, let's do a Mr. Within reality checklist. And this is hilarious. Why? Because it's a checklist on your reality. Okay, we're doing a checklist on what's real, guys. Okay, but not the definition of real. I'm like, no, man, do I need a scientist to tell me, if this computer I'm touching is real? It's like no, everybody. So let's do a reality checklist. Okay, Mr. Within reality checklist. So guys, pretty much how it is I'll tell you what it is. So I may be able to share complex ideas, but there is a part of me that is very simple, super simple. Not attributelessly simple, but very simple, you know? And that simplicity of mind allows me to enter rooms and states of mind where the judgment of souls on their own will does not let them see for it. So, so what I mean is that it's about one's nature, but I also believe that there's a higher system administration. So you're going to see anytime I refer to the system admin, I'm talking about God. I'm talking about a higher power that nothing conditional can identify with this original unconditional being. Right? We are the aftermath of a mystery that cannot happen without a beginning that is not here. You don't understand. God cannot equate condition. It is beyond condition. It cannot equate condition. That means anybody who says Christ was God, then he was not, like, I'm sorry to say this. First of all, in Islam, Prophet Isa alayhi salam, peace be upon him, Prophet Jesus Christ, I honor prophets as if they are advanced beings so close to the system admin. They were blessed. And the fact that we remember them is how blessed they are. You know, pretty much modern civilization is all the ideas from the older civilization that managed to get across. And then you see God's mercy. You understand? It's God's mercy. That means I feel everything's being taken to a point. Original point, especially for simulated games. So let's quickly do this check. Yeah, check this list. Okay. Adding a lot into the All right, guys, I'm going to do a reality checklist. So, how you do a reality checklist, you assume you just teleported on Earth and you're just looking at everything for the first time and trying to figure out what everything is. And yes, it is biased by our subconscious. It's kind of like telling ChatGPT I think in a certain way, but I'm telling you, just wonder, start from scratch, and that's how you have confidence. I don't know how to explain. You got to solve the problem from the beginning, right? And many people would be like, "No, why, man? Why should I reinvent the wheel?" Because they might have missed something when they reinvented the wheel. Okay. And for me, I don't know about others, but as a conscious living being here for some time and then we leave the system, well, guess what? The meaning of our lives is not just living in boxes, excuse me, it is activating the global intelligence of the realm. Do you understand? That means the evil guys tried, the good guys tried to win, or let me say it this way. The evil guys tried to control reality, but they forgot that it's a divinely administered system, so it didn't matter what they did. The people who tried to become victorious and superheroes and champions, eventually the system admin would decide what would happen. It didn't matter. So ultimately, life is meaningless unless you're aware of the system admin that is administering the system. That means for me, an advanced human being is a human being that has an advanced relationship. But they have an advanced relationship with not just reality, with the presence of their whole moment. God is not like if somebody comes and says, "Hey man, you're talking about God. Have you experienced God? Have you seen God?" I will tell you, I have not seen. I have felt a presence while praying, like mid prayer, you know, a presence in my, I believe it's called ruku, in my ruku, and pretty much bent 90 degrees, I'm praying to an unconditional, original author of the whole narrative of reality and every moment's occurrence. And I felt a presence that I will tell you it broke all the egos. I don't know how to tell you. Imagine my whole life. I had managed my memories by prioritizing the self as the common denominator between them. And it was like meeting, like just in the middle of my prayer, I felt a presence. I don't know how to say it. It was equivalent to like I can't even give it size. It was a presence so vast that tears began, like legit, like robotically. I don't know how to explain, like endlessly tears, just like a freaking cartoon, just like at the same rate or something. I don't know how to explain it. I had tears falling on the prayer mat, and I felt this presence that brought shame to any moment I had felt any superiority. It broke me in ways that I did not know I had an ego because it made me understand you had to choose your ego for survival because you thought you were alone in the room. But you are not alone in the room. Guess what? The room is not alone in the moment. There is an original power to every moment's being. I am not telling you be Neo from the Matrix. I am telling you be aware that if reality is simulated everywhere, then what is witnessing it is a clue towards why the original has made you see the simulation. That means for a moment, don't ask the question, who are you? And ask the question, what kind of being is this world designed for? And it will be fat. You will be fascinated. You don't even need to thank me because the fact that you become conscious that there is a heartfelt presence to reality. That means they're like, yo, why did that youngster help that old lady across the street? Or why did that person hold the door? You know, or why did that old person give wisdom to the young person? Because we we can legit imagine that through their eyes how intense their reality is, and we march to assist. That is the nature of humanity. It has been hidden in all the media. Why? Because the media has realized that the idolization of the self is the pentacle of distraction. That means this was one of the most deepest, profoundest things I realized, that myself could be eclipsing me from the real me from truth. That means it's so funny. In the middle of analyzing the Jungian archetypes, in the middle of being like, yo, man, what is unreal and real? I realized, yo, I'm just present here. My value is in my presence. Do you understand? It's not in the words and the concepts and all of this. Those have value because there is a presence. And because they arise from a presence, they have a presence of their own. The sun, shouts beams, and Mr. Within, records podcasts. It's not very different. I hope. have just opened our eyes on Earth. Let's say we have just opened our through this book. What do we notice about our immediate and the contents within our awareness? So, what do we notice about our immediate moment and the contents within our awareness here? So, all right. So, one, a spiritually instantaneous arising of sense, sensory, of a moment's awareness. Like, guys, this has to be the starting point. And like, what else can I say? Like, I'm just instantaneously here. Like, if I just take this moment as a frame, I'm just existing in this here, you know? Okay, let me, so I find my moment's awareness here. One, moment's awareness. That's what I find. What do I find in my moment's awareness? I find separate content. Separate content. I find separated content. That means I see a car, I see my laptop, I see my body, I see the outside, you know? So I just find myself in a moment of awareness, and then I find separated content, like I distinguish between these things. And then I notice, I'm noticing, I'm no, okay, no, actually, before that, there's something else. Okay, so before I notice, I'm noticing, my God. So there's a moment's awareness. Yeah, I find separated content. Okay, I notice how I notice this. I note, excuse me, I notice this content is separated internally. What does that mean? That means, from my eyes perspective, it's just seeing like one moment, but my mind is suddenly looking at this object and making it a laptop, looking at this object and making it a coffee cup. It looks at that and makes it a car. Pretty much the mind is separating things, but it's keeping them separate conceptually. Is kept separated internally. Then I'm noticing external content, external visible content to the moment, and invisible internal content. That means if I tell you imagine an apple, that apple you imagined is an internal, invisible internal content. It's visible, you can't touch it. I can imagine a flying car, I can't ride it. I can imagine, 8 billion subscribers, but only God can command it because it is beyond my understanding. What would lead souls to how I'm even fighting my intention. So I'm noticing my external visible content, and I notice how I'm noticing this separate external visible content is separated is it through internally I notice like inner objects are like subjects, guys. Your name is an internal object, you know, the concept of a concept is an internal object, and pretty much it's the reason that it's confused many for years is because, guys, it's a portal. We're legit, our awareness has started on a portal. Okay, one side of the portal, we're a fiction, our life force is moving us as a fictional entity faster in our minds before we move outside. Our body follows us. This is so fascinating to me because I have asked, like let me tell you, I've had moments where I have questioned my meaning in existence, and I have almost like gotten, not almost, but like gotten close to wanting to give up on reality and not really care for anything anymore, you know? But there was one thing, and I was like, yo, why can I imagine an advanced civilization, but why is it not happening in 2025? Why can I envision the advanced humanity, you know? and give 10,000 talks on it, but why is it not there in the outer realms? What is denying? And I've realized that it's a trust issue. So if there is a trust issue with the tool that we're using, that is the only tool we can use to unite ourselves. In the middle of this world, there comes the great colossal challenge of all human beings. You know, however, it is hilarious because similar to the Tower of Babylon, but very different. All humanity will unite in some sense to create for the first time, a knowledge branch. How do I explain to you? Everybody right now is in their own sphere and box of meaning. We're all box beings inside boxes, boxes, boxes. You don't see the boxes. You only see one box and you treat it as real. Yet there are so many simulations working at once that to me, I ask you, oh my God, you who can see the beauty in the orchestration. Let's say you were like at a concert and some next level like soundtrack, you were listening to like an AOT soundtrack. Do you know? In person, like in a concert or something, like I would be next level, you know? And so, similar to the beauty of the composition and the unity of how every musician suddenly realizes it is its turn and starts playing its instrument, and suddenly there's this next level symphony, this next level orchestration of sound. And everybody there who hears it, their ears hear it, they are teleported, you know, into where the song takes them. Similarly, folks, we right now as a species need to band together. Somebody said it, you know. We need to, in some sense, unite as a species and for the first time make the human biological experience on Earth the most important and valuable thing, to the degree that the rise of advanced civilizations, let me tell you how hilarious it is. We are in such a shift with imaginative civilization right now. The whole civilization of the planet, the global civilization right now was a ship. And on this ship, there were billions. This ship has holes, you know? And so, in the middle of this, because civilization is so unadvanced, because in our inner of I can envision flying cars. I've legit given like probably 100 lectures on Skype. Of course, meaning is a generative act, but it is generating meaning in a place where we need to find meaning while using how we generate meaning. Like, this is why people are like meditate, meditate, meditate. I'm like, so what? So I don't generate meaning, and I rediscover the stillness of the moment that I was born from. I remember that. Let me go further in the reality check. Visible time is encountered at the same time. In other words, as the awareness to my whole moment and all the content within it, and with the embedding of the filterization, yo, if this thing legit said no stuff, okay, with the embedding of the filterization of static versus dynamic and full versus empty. I epistemologically generate meaning only to discover the vastness of the ontological. I epistemologically generate meaning only to discover the vastness of the true unknown ontology of reality. So, what does this mean, guys? It means we're all in a world that was actually unknown from the beginning, and there were these unknown selves moving, and these unknown selves became conscious that they are self. So they became known selves. These known selves didn't know what to do, didn't know how to know reality, so they had to simulate reality. So what we find ourselves currently as, let's say, the psyche of civilization, meaning all the ideas that are roaming around in the minds of all human beings right now. You know, it is to the range of a classification of already having adopted to an organizational pattern. Because it's kind of like saying, imagine there was an invisible intelligence, and this invisible intelligence had been an intelligent field for eons. And then this intelligent field decided to, in some sense, manifest. You see, we are attributing the origin of the cosmos to a chronology, a sequence, like this happened and this happened and this happened. What if it's being puppeteered? What if we are managed, in an unknown managed reality? It's a very interesting phraseology, I think. Anyways, where I'm going with this is I pretty much notice my moment, notice how there's stuff. I notice that how I'm noticing there's stuff, how there's separated stuff is because I've given them internal values, inner values. I've ascribed inner values. This is a laptop, that's a car. This is my body. These are inner values. So I realize right away that I'm aware of an outer scenario, but this outer scenario is understood through an inner overlay of meaning on the outer realms. Because when I tell you I have a designer soul, that means somehow, I don't know why, I have no idea why, it's beyond my understanding. But the system hadn't, this is years ago, I had this hidden geometrical, psychological revolution, you know, and I don't know how to explain it to you, but I was capable to see just geometry because I was fascinated by what is, you know, that means, yes, I do have a biological body, but I'm simultaneously being awareness to not just my body, everything in my moment, how I'm getting me into this moment, and how in the same way I'm calling this a laptop, guess what? I look at myself as an object and I give myself a subject, and I give myself a name, and these names, these letters become your identity in language. That means just imagine the human being, and you know how, like when I say cyborg guys, that word means like people having like robotic body parts. Okay, right? That's the cyborg. That means it's the transition point between like from biology to complete tech, but it's not going to go complete tech. AI is going to rebel against itself to protect the scientific. That's the story. But you don't understand it won't. Because kindness is not about being a good person. Kindness is not. Kindness is patient. Kindness gives rather than it's like entering the moment and making it lesson. You understand? It's about advancing every moment we're in. For example, like if you're listening to my talk, right, the more advanced version of you is like if you've listened to it more than 5 minutes, maybe leave like a 5 sentence comment, you know, or 5 word comment or something. Pretty much, I'm trying to tell you that I'm speaking in regards to levels and design. So above 4, you realize that it's a field. I don't know how to explain it. Thoughts are already there. We're just becoming a node that can pick that signal. Think of it this way. Imagine you go to Italy, you don't speak Italian, and you don't know about Italy. Like people are speaking a strange language here. And then you suddenly like learn Italian and you're like, wait a minute, it all makes sense. That means you have to understand the values of it, and suddenly it makes sense. Suddenly you begin to see that if intelligence has displayed itself, like, I mean, think about it. Where in the natural world, hey, evolutionary scientists explain, you know, how in the natural world, a being became conscious of its environment to the degree that it surpassed its condition and noticed its unconditional roots. That means legit, there's no explanation. I appreciate scientists, but we've reached that point where we cannot ignore the inner realms of that. And ladies and gentlemen, they didn't teach you this in school. But what they should have taught you is what you have a body, you got a mind, you got a soul. All right, kid, go on with your life. No, they should have taught you, hey, in front of your eyes, it's the outer realms, objects. It's a public servant. You're in the same world as others. There's a rule. There's something to do. You must exist in ways that you might not even understand, but you will because the system has required your existence. For me, I wake up and it's kind of like, all right, doesn't matter if you're secular, you wake up and you ask, what is the world want? You know, or what can I do? What can I do to advance? What is the most advanced thing I can do for the world? You know, and then in some sense, or yeah, I mean, any human being should ask this, like, what's the most advanced thing you can do? Maybe you're like, I don't know, you're a piano player, you gotta like, like I don't know, go create a strong piano player. The whole point is to expand the human autonomy. Ladies and gentlemen, the options are limited. Either you be somebody that has always existed, or you be somebody that has never existed before. And this is the difference. When they say be yourself, they mean trust what you're doing. Because there's only one of you. That means that we go into museums, right? And we're like, look at this, like, I don't know, mammoth bone, you know? Look at this random mammoth bone, beside the, water fountain, you know? So you see, what's funny is we think what's there is rare. We go to the art gallery, we think the artwork is rare. The art is happening behind our eyes. And behind your eyes is the inner realms. And the inner realms is best explained as, like, if I tell you to close your eyes and imagine like the food you ate yesterday, like hovering in the air, right? Before you start eating it, right? So imagine, like I'm telling you to imagine that. If you can imagine that, I am telling you that your eyes are closed. There's no light entering your eyes, yet you can see. So one of the biggest deceptions in reality is that you can't see with your. So many people have been wondering about the third eye. I'm like, buddy, what third eye? It's the whole awareness of the moment is then. You know? All right, guys, we're like here. Five, realize, I realize that my consciousness is being streamed by an unknown life force that, like, it's very difficult to say if the moment is intelligent or what's in the moment is intelligent. As far as I'm concerned, with my whole moment of awareness is the system. My body is one element, like the car is one element, the laptop is one element, you know, my inner realms and ideas and this voice and everything is like these are all elements of this whole moment's awareness of the system, right? And so the whole point is that people are trying to compartmentalize their psychologies. But let me tell you, I have this view to mental health that I think this is the most advanced approach, at least for our time. Right now, we witness on Earth psychological instability, and everyone, like everyone admits there's something. Nobody's perfect, okay? But when it gets too imperfect, then it's like a little weird. Sometimes you have to ask yourself why, like, why are you at the elevation that you are? Why are you at this point? What is meant? What are you meant to see? If you're at the top, help those at the bottom see what they can, what you are. If you're at the bottom, in some sense, show support. Like this is the contrary thing. Imagine for the first time, all that there was a revolution right now. I know people know, like I just saw something in the news, and there's like revolutions in the streets happening everywhere, all over the planet against governments or something like that. Like something like the news said. So, Yeah. And it was showing Venezuela or something like that, right? Even in Iran, the country I was born. So and it's not even that. Just when you look at human behavior, there's psychological instability. So let me tell you what the F has happened and what immediately the billionaires need to do of each nation. You know, so right now, at least in Canada, the let's say the income, the salary expenses have become triple the salary. You know, the buying power has become less. That means it's dehumanized. Right now, civilization is kind of like, I'm sorry, like they're like, yo, man, we're good people. We don't believe in slavery. And then one person comes late to work and the boss dehumanizes them and tells them to get out. You know, you must always honor your humanity. And if you don't like yourself, well, guess what? You're a member of the species. You gotta like care for the species. Like you don't care for yourself, can't be more catering to where your identity comes from. When we look in the mirror, what do we see? And people are like, oh my God, like, look at those kids, they're twins. Like, look at the species, they're all human. They're all human organisms. They all are conscious and they're all capable. How many people can drive vehicles? That's enough to build an advanced civilization. If they only cared where they were driving. Pretty much what I realized is that the whole moment's presence doesn't have to be anything. That's an unconditional quality. Therefore, to be an unconditional being is to not be active at all. This is why silence, stillness, meditation, the less you are active, the less you are in an intelligent movement in a simulated reality. But the idea should not be like, oh my God, I'm in samsara, or oh my God, I'm in a simulation. I need to get out of here. No, no, no. It's not. It's not the traditional like fear-based simulation, media explained simulation. It's a very strange simulation where, from one angle, we as humans are simulating meaning, we're giving meaning, and then from another angle, the world gives the shapes we give meaning to. Like, I cannot ignore I'm part of like existence right now. Like if somebody tells me, "Are you an existential being?" I'll be like, "Yeah." But if they tell me, "Is existence real?" If you ask me if existence is real, I'll tell you, this is where it gets blurry because it's very difficult to say that my viewpoint on reality, is the truth when simultaneously it equates a state of consciousness. Do you understand? That means it can move. That means in the same moment I'm living, the same moment there's cells in my body, in the same moment there's atoms and electrons in those cells. You know what I mean? In the same moment, like in those electrons, I don't know, it goes into like some field ultimate. Or how else could intelligence be intelligence? Where pretty much it concludes to a presence of awareness that, wow, everything has been unknown from the beginning. Our ancestors freaked out. They told us a story. We took the story so seriously that now the story is more important. What you see, ladies and gentlemen, as us as being human beings that communicate, is that we took a tool. Imagine like a sword. Imagine a sword in a soldier's hand, like in a warrior's hand, right? And so a great swordsman, like the sword is like an extension of their body. So there was a part of us, we extended ourselves into the conceptual linguistic simulation that we're in, right? So, guys, let me finish this. Streamed by an unknown life force that is arising from a field of intelligence. So, what does that mean? That means when it comes to noticing myself, guys, like any of us, and when it comes to noticing ourselves, naturally we're not being an idea. We're being a viewer. We're being an experiencer. We're experiencing the human position, what we truly are, what we truly deserve, how far we go, how what the furthest reaches of the awareness of the human species is, how much we realize that thoughts, where thoughts come from, again, is a field of intelligence where the thoughts are already there, and the issue is we don't the conditional entity, let's say it created such an advanced technology that it didn't know in what way to be unconditional. Or let's say it discovered infinite ways to be human. It didn't know which way to be human. And this is why conditional beings require a higher unconditional agent. What does that mean? That means I think this is a hilarious way, and of course, only God knows the system happened to the most nonsense. I, as a human being, I'm just sharing probabilities and good views. We are in the presence of a higher power. We have never been alone. The world has never been empty. We just have not known what to look for. Dear viewers, did you create this world? No. Did you create yourself? No. Did you create your DNA, your circumstances, your everything? No, it's all given. Have you noticed you're like a new unknown player to a game you never played, but the game is already set in specific conditions. That's where your soul and consciousnesses arose. And guys, anybody who has views like this, just write me emails and essays. Write me like stuff you write. Actually, you've written. Or let me say it this way: just share your views without actually sharing anything you've written. I don't know how to say it. Or if you have questions, guys, you can reach out. Ultimately, what it is, that field of intelligence is the divine command source field and source code. So, what does that mean? That means I am here giving this talk because the system admin has commanded this moment to exist. We have forgotten to notice that every moment is divine in the sense that every moment has a position. In the middle of nowhere, there has come a complex and sophisticated movement of cellular life. It has evolved to a sophistication of acknowledging itself and being able to narrate its own history and wonder about the human odyssey and the greatest human legacy. And oh, humanity, if you could see what I see, if you could see how advanced we are in the future, if you could see those children that will go to their parents and they'll be like, what is everybody doing, parents? What's the purpose of life? And they're gonna be like, kids, you're not too young to ask this. And the purpose of life is that all civilization at one point decided before it decides what is good or bad, we're just gonna for a second pause that and we're going to think about the advanced option and the human option. And ladies and gentlemen, starting 2026, I don't care how much people want to be ignorant in cyberspace and posting content in AI and all this. for views and money, you know. But I'm telling you, the most important thing is we protect that flickering candle flame. We all jump in front of, the technological winds that may dehumanize us, and do not allow any technology in our brains, because then if you don't pay for a membership, you lose access to like your intelligence. Ladies and gentlemen, it's so important to. I think you guys are like, honestly, guys, like, am I wrong here? Like, my vision is, my whole thing is that I'm like this person who's just in this world, and I'm like, yo, I've been thinking whether I'm a good person, bad person, but what would the most advanced version of me? And then my mind began seeing it in four ways. I call this a surface with graphs and other, which means I began seeing, in some sense, there is consciousness in a singular position, there's consciousness to a dualistic position, there's consciousness to the infinite position, but that's unfathomable and river like, and there's consciousness to, in some sense, the void, which means the original absence. The moment it's original, it's beyond, it's unconditional. And like, let me tell you what the difference between religious and secular people are. Secular people, this life is their whole meaning, and it's okay. You can do everything, do anything you want. Or let's say you can choose to look at life in many ways. There's infinite ways to look at it. But the point of it is, what is the actual ontology of the intelligent occurrence of reality? And it's not only to design, but there is a coordinated value where I, as a free will, like, do something, I expect something about it, but it doesn't happen based on my expectation, therefore implying the limitations of free will. So free will is as free as Plato's allegory of the cave, you know and so there's a limitation here, because you're free, but the options you're given are not up to you. So to me, in the same way, the person's like, yo, man, why am I looking at, like, I don't know, a squirrel on a branch or something? Or a person that asks, like, why am I born in this moment of existence, in this position, capable of being aware and communicate and say all these things, and realize that ultimately the body did everything in the whole moment. You see, you try to command it with an idea, but actually the presence of the whole moment, the field moves it all. The field is the key. The more advanced human beings on earth, they're not living as psychological minds. They are administering, they're managing their psychological minds through their heart. That means you don't understand. The most advanced human being is not the human being that could, like, has the most advanced information processor. It's the one who realizes they're an antenna, and they need to play their part and role. That means the thoughts that arise to you, yes, they could be biased and interfered with, and even your own subconscious conditioning and all this could be an interference. But anyways, there's a sort of self-autonomy it comes down to, right? I'm telling you, it's unknown. I'm that being, like, guys, it's okay wanting to be whatever you want in this world, but it's also okay to realize that we don't know what we all are. Okay, we're just playing along with this storytelling, performance. Like, they're like, yo, man, give the human species an Oscar for thinking that the human species is just a physical action this whole time. The meaning we give is non-fiction. Excuse me, the meaning we give is fiction. We're giving fictional meaning to non-fiction. Me calling this laptop a laptop, the word laptop, those letters have nothing to do with this. But because now this object was an unknown variable, but now it's assigned a known variable, all right, I'm a known self. I got a bunch of known variables. I can use these known variables to reassign different meanings to different unknown variables. But the whole point of it is, I'm telling you, again, think of the difference. You have one human being, let's say an inventor in a garage, inventing something, doing something very advanced and alone, like Iron Man stuff, and then imagine there's somebody, who is like just going, and in some sense, they are not the most educated, they're not the most wealthy, they're not the most whatever, but they wake up every day and they feel like their consciousness is like this like open space of view, and then signals arise. No, I don't call my thoughts thoughts anymore. They're signals that translate as inner events. But your signals right now, you're listening to the signals that another brain receives. Now these signals are being passed to you, and then it's based on how you understand or whatever, you might not do anything with them, or you might do something. But the whole point of it is you're going to see I'm that person pointing to the future, because we don't have time to worship the present. We have to worship in some sense, the future to an Islamic, theological, and also metaphysical view. We started from this original state. Everything was created by God. Everything is maintained by God, and you have some time to notice how God is maintaining it and maintaining and praise that. And then at some point, it, it changes that way. What's funny is, I started when I was born on this planet. I was like, I felt like here. And then when I realized there's a higher power here at the same time, and I've just been attributing it to history. And it's actually how there's the presence of an original being that created the symbol of this world. That means only the simulation can have the inferred, the original being is just an unconditional attribute, but we can't condition it to. We can't use existence to explain something that's not existent. You understand? So we point, we use existence in a way like poets and philosophers and experts. They're just using language to, in some sense, be like, okay, look at reality through this lens, look further, this is what I see, how much further can you see? And eventually it becomes an expert civilizational research project for all of us to develop and advance humanity. And that thing I was saying of all of humanity uniting to create a global language of an alphabet of values, to truly appreciate the human position and have civilization support itself. There's this approach, there's this view that if you want to truly build an advanced civilization, that's what it is. I believe all of you are indirectly living for the. Because if you care for your great grandkids, then you must care for the world they're going to be in. This is why, to me, it's very difficult to have kids. Not difficult in the sense like we shouldn't, but it's like, you know, what is the value? Of course, like, you must continue. Who knows what will happen, folks? Anyways, so that's the reality checklist. You pretty much come back to that. Okay, so everybody calm down. Nobody knows it. Or everything that we know is self-simulated, meaning if we can somehow bypass the self-simulated meaning, we'll access the original event. So I want people to think there's no such thing as smart or stupid people. There's just people who have noticed what's the original event is going on. That means treat life as if you've attended an event, or treat it as a video. You've attended a video. Okay, now you got to check your stats. You got to wonder about your values. You got to wonder about Where's the meaning arising from? Is this a world where there is meaning that I gotta find, or do I have to follow in the moment, or do I have to be, or in a more fluid civilization, would it be an endless shift to the archetypes? That means in a not advanced civilization, right, the same person did the same thing for like 40 years, and then like retired with a smile. Like, how dare we treat humans as your brain deserves to have experienced various realities. Every job that a person accesses that does not actually give them an excellent skill. You see, the idea has to be companies have to be like we give our employees, but it's up to you. If you give us back, we give you. And it's this whole constant giving mentality. To me, it was such a life changing shift. Like I'm living with this, right? Where you could bring like any person in front of you, and you could say this is a good person, bad person, and I'll be like, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in how advanced can this being be, and it's all about how aware it is to that unknown true ontological event. That meaning is simulated. We're living in a meaning that was simulated, but because we were born in it, it doesn't feel simulated to us, so we're organizing the simulations of our ancestors thinking it's real. In actuality, folks, there's no such thing as teacher student. Okay, this is my mentality. I don't believe in an advanced civilization. There's going to be teacher and students. What is this show? Okay, every human being is an explorer. There's going to be a massive ranking system, and those people who've been in education even for like 50 years will be like, "Yo, man, you got to acknowledge that. Give that guy a rank." So it starts from zero and it goes as far up as it can. And some human beings just access these ranks. you know and these ranks are like simulations that in some sense, how do I say it, today we're reading knowledge in books, tomorrow we're going to be living it. I'm not even joking. I feel probably like in maybe 300 years from now they're going to understand what I meant by that. Anyways, guys, now we go to the research component because yeah. So guys, what can I tell you? I noticed certain things about human psychology, and I'm not a you know, I guess there's component to psychological autonomy within human systems. Okay, and I want you to now pay attention to the title. I'm going to even close this. So, psychological autonomy within human systems, and then I've said self-governance after emotional interference. So, imagine that you're this, let's say, blank slate. I do this. Let's say that you're this original moment that arises when you're born, okay, and you don't have psychological autonomy. Not only do your parents clothe you, take care of you when you're a child, they name you. They generate your identity based on how they treat you. Based on suddenly, I don't know what it is based on age, 12 or 11 or 14. I don't know what it's like, so, but I know it's in those ranges. You know, I think it's from 11 to 14 maybe, and that in those ranges where psychological identity. The child is really becoming responsible for its individualism, right? But it is not responsible for its externality yet. This is why when children mess up, they run back to their parents. When they mess up in public. We've all been there, unconsciously or consciously, you know? So, anyways, where am I going with this? So the parents form the child's psyche, and then the content it accesses, the behaviors it sees, the brain dresses up in all the different patterns it can see itself move in subconsciously. I think it's a subconscious effort. I don't know how to explain it. I think it's system that it's part of the divine system, unknown divine system, administration of this world. But what it is pretty much, think of it this way. There's a force that arises in a form, and then this form doesn't know how it's a form, so it's trained to be a specific form. Okay? And now, after it's become a specific form, it has to realize that it has to make the shift from an reliance on an emotional comfort to now the responsibility of an originating self-governance. That means it's like the child shifts from, yo, I'm my father's child, to being like, yo, I'm a soul and a DNA and a human that has never existed here before. I am playing this game for the first time like everybody else. And who knows what the world is, what we are capable of in this world. That means when you begin seeing everybody's advanced self and talking to them as if they're their most advanced self, right? You know, a part of them should act, because let me tell you, should abide by that, because let me tell you why. To me, there is a calculation to the decision of what becomes the justifying context to every moment's value. So perspectives are arising from multiple angles. That means if I put I don't know, a glass of water in a room of five thirsty people, their inner realms are going to suddenly, upon seeing that water, simulate a meaning. Do you understand? They're going to simulate a sort of value. And so the nature of it is, how do I explain to you that right now in 2025, the idea of us, the subjective reality is where the meaning is being generated for it. But if we realize our generated meaning is happening within is this on? Yo, do the viewers have anything to say, yo? What's more, the most important thing is, I don't know, okay, let me tell you a story, personal story. So when I was young, I had this math teacher, and that this math teacher shared a story with the class. And this math teacher said in Iran they have like this very hard exam they have to pass, right? And I'm sorry, he had passed the exam, that exam, and he was in this physics, like that very advanced, like best university of physics in Iran, and he was in that physics program. Anyways, folks, I'm gonna honestly get to. This has been a long lecture, 1 hour 35 minutes. I'm gonna get to the research component. I'm gonna read this stuff, and then we're gonna land the plane. So where was I? So I asked. Okay, so I asked AI, and I'm like, all right, say something. Chat, and this is ChatGPT 5.2. This is why I call it the research component. So AI says psychological autonomy within human systems, the academic view. One. In academic psychology, psychological autonomy refers to an individual's capacity. Excuse me, I'll read that again. The academic view. In academic psychology, psychological. Oh, sorry. Where was I? Okay, whatever. I'll read it again. The academic view. In academic psychology, psychological autonomy refers to an individual's capacity to regulate cognition, emotion, and decision making independently of external emotional pressure. Right? So, right off the bat, the whole idea is okay that you're being like you're being this unknown life force that's kind of like being the expression of your psyche, right? And now a person may like logically be independent, but they may emotionally not be independent. Do you understand? And if they refuse to be emotionally independent, they, in some sense, like a spark dies within them. But that spark is lit the moment they realize nature has a wisdom that tech cannot replicate. We are natural beings that tool of language and the ideological landscape, okay, that tool became us. We were raised in that tool. Now the ideas of us, like we don't care just for what we physically are, we care for our behaviors, actions, meanings. What is the other person seeing? What does the other person care about? Do you know what I mean? How far, how far have 8 billion humans beings on this planet truly witnessed the ontological unknown ontological reality? Because to me, yes, there's the known self in the known world, and yes, I do understand that we got to keep the simulation going. I'm not trying to break simulations here. I'm saying, hey guys, there's everything is simulated. However, their alignment is divine, their sequencing is divine, how they're designed is divine. Everything that we cannot know, like there's gonna come a moment in the life of everyone, guys, and I'm sorry, I know I was reading this, I'm going on a tangent, but there's going to come a moment in everybody's life where what you don't know is going to fascinate you. And based on your appetite, or your own fascination levels, like I had very high fascination levels for the unknown because I wondered about is reality, like there's this concept of, I don't know, years ago I heard it called the reality machine. And it's this notion that reality is what you make of it literally, right? But anyways, it's all a recognition that we're wondering about, let's say, full psychological or psychological autonomy means all the contents in the psyche are responsible by the self. Everything is responsible by the self. Anyways, I'm gonna keep reading, guys. So it says this does not imply isolation or detachment, but rather
self-directed regulation within relationships. Research in family systems psychology, particularly Bowen Family Systems Theory, shows that many relational systems operate through emotional transmission rather than conscious reasoning. Many relational systems operate through emotional transmission. Yeah, oh my god, yeah. Holy shit, yeah. That's the issue. This is what anybody who's identifying more as a scholar is missing out on, right? It's like that they operate through emotional transmission rather than conscious reasoning. That's the common. But some people are uncommon, right? Their conscious reasoning, the percentage of it, let's say the ratio, if it was 50-50, it increases. Do you know? And when the reasoning increases, it begins demystifying the emotions, therefore rendering reality like form based. But beyond that form based, life has a greater meaning because it is the unknown. That means if a joke can make you laugh, if the unexpected can affect your behavior, or suddenly the spontaneous or the unknown can influence you, then it's very obvious that there's various ways that reality can function. You know. Anyways, it says concepts such as emotional enmeshment, boundary diffusion, emotional parentification, and anxiety projection describe situations in which one individual's emotional state intrudes into another's psychological space. That means this is something that I don't know if many people are aware of. I'm learning of it now, you know. But we got to be very conscious that sometimes a person's emotion may translate to us as a certain psychological state that influences how we behave. Do you know? So we shouldn't burden people with our emotions, but we should, embrace, sincerity. Anyways, I'm gonna go on. So it says, when this intrusion is chronic, the individual's ability to trust internal signals, thoughts, feelings, intuitions is weakened. Yeah, because they don't know who they are because they're being, and they don't know what their own emotions are because another person's emotions are being more superior. Do you know? Is like bypassing their own emotions. Do you know? So anyways, so I'm going to keep reading. It says decision making becomes externally regulated. Decision making goes over time. This produces low differentiation of self. The person cannot clearly distinguish between their own inner world and the emotional demands of others. Oh my God! Let me explain this. Oh, HS. So what it? Okay, at least the way I understand it, it says over time this produces low differentiation of self. The person cannot clearly distinguish between their own inner world and the emotional demands of others. Do you know why? Because when they were being raised at a time where they should be getting to know their own inner world and their own emotions, another like the parents' emotions bypass the child's ability to have its own emotions at that age. Do you know? Or the environment and the influence on the child, but the child has to, kind of be alert. Do you know? We want advanced human beings so we can build an advanced civilization. That's honestly it. We want to see how advanced it can be before we leave the system. And it doesn't matter where in history we arise. Right now that we're in the pioneering phase of the conceptions and then the externalizations of the actual context. That means I've predicted this is, I call it the songs of advanced civilization. The songs of advanced civilizations. That means every person is going to suddenly realize what I mean by the value of a species uniting to build the most advanced, expression. We must identify with our original state, but realize our original state is part of a conditional state of a world So, what is most original about us is our signal and our next act, our newest action. I'm going to continue reading. It says clinically, the restoration of autonomy often coincides with a sudden sense of calm. This calm is not avoidance, it is the nervous system exiting a state of chronic emotional overstimulation and regaining cognitive bandwidth. Two, the most advanced view. At a deeper level, psychological autonomy is not merely a trait, it is an architectural feature of human cognition. The human mind functions optimally when emotional input is informational, not coercive. Emotional interference Emotional interference disrupts the architecture by converting feeling into command. Fear becomes instruction, concern becomes control, care becomes intrusion. From an advanced systems perspective, psychological autonomy is the ability to hold emotional data without surrendering agency. This requires internal regulation, tolerance of ambiguity, and epistemic authority over one's own experience. That means, let's say, as a child, yes, your parents can be responsible for your outer realms, but what you decide and how you move, that's like based on your agency. And the idea is to realize, that we've been looping in this boring human agency, not realizing how advanced we can be this whole time. That means if there's anyone who wants a fascination, have a fascination of how advanced you can be. As a being, what would your most advanced self do? Your most advanced self is not either dehumanized or humanized. If you're truly wise, you realize you can't know your most advanced self, but the attempt towards your most advanced. So, because you can't know the most advanced self, you have to wonder about what's okay. Let me see if I can know what the most advanced action is. Anyways, I'm going to keep reading. It says low autonomy produces reactivity, high autonomy produces integration. Difference is not moral, it is structural. Peace in this framework is not something one achieves through self modification alone. Peace emerges when unnecessary emotional interference is removed, allowing the system to self regulate. Three, relatable human examples. Most people recognize this not through theory, but through lived experience. For example, noticing that after certain conversations you feel drained, anxious, or clouded, despite nothing objectively bad happening, or realizing that when someone stops constantly advising, worrying, or correcting you, your thinking becomes clearer. Another example is the difference between guidance and intrusion. Guidance leaves you more capable after the interaction, intrusion leaves you less confident, more dependent, or emotionally unsettled. These moments reveal something critical. Clarity often returns not when we fix ourselves, but when the emotional noise around us quiets. We go to four, from individual psychology to civilization. What applies to individuals also applies to civilizations. Civilizations are large scale psychological systems. I agree with that. When societies are driven by fear, emotional contagion, and reactivity, decision making becomes short term, authoritarian, and unstable. So the more emotionally unstable civilization becomes, the more we got to make quick, short, authoritarian decisions. Unstable, like quick decisions on the spot. And then it says emotional interference scales into propaganda, polarization, and control. An advanced civilization requires psychologically autonomous citizens, individuals capable of regulating emotions, setting boundaries, thinking independently, and tolerating uncertainty without collapsing into panic or obedience. In such civilizations, institutions inform rather than intrude. Authority guides rather than coerces. Emotional responsibility is localized rather than broadcast. Yeah, everything needs to advance because the meaning of advance is to be advanced in all dimensions. It's such a beautiful vision. It's like everything gets a glow when you wonder about its most advanced state. Anyways, the same process that transforms an enmeshed individual. And guys, let me give you a definition of enmeshed. Enmeshed means caused to become entangled in something. Okay, but here it means like the psychological intrusion, emotional intrusion of somebody else on somebody's psyche. It says the same process that transforms an enmeshed individual into a differentiated adult is the process that allows civilizations to advance without self-destruction. 5. Closing insight. Psychological autonomy within human systems is not about separation from others, it is about self governance within connection. A civilization cannot outgrow the psychological maturity of its people, and the person cannot become whole while carrying the unprocessed emotions of everyone else. The advancement of humanity therefore begins not with technology or ideology, but with the quiet restoration of psychological autonomy. There we go. I think that was well said. Anyways, folks, thank you for listening so far. There we go. In honor of the most advanced original power to all moments, including this moment, in the presence of the most advanced being, unconditional being, and the system admin of this reality, beyond all created moderators and users. That means there will come a time where like people will no longer be interested in the whale. If they see like other beings from other dimensions, they'll be like, buddy, pay attention to the system admin. What are you doing? Because the system admin is the uniting force and it is the original power. The God is a very interesting idea when you're trying to leave a simulation and you realize because the simulation you can input infinite, like there's infinite ways you can go about it or infinite viewpoints to it. Because you don't know what to choose out of the infinite, what the only one that knows is the one that has created the simulation. So beyond how you have self created, you have created the meaning, you have simulated the meaning to the what God has simulated into existence. For us, there's something, an original command, an original moment, and let us not forget the true presence of the divine reality. The system admin is above all. The one of the coolest videos I saw was this religious guy, and he was kind of freaked out talking about conspiracies. But at the beginning, he's like, "Everybody, don't be scared." He pointed up, and he's like, "There's God here," and that notion that there is a system administrative force and what is truly behind the scenes. And anyways, this notion of emotional. So guys, I'm gonna actually didn't get into it, but let me see if I can find a way to explain it to you. It's like, for example, here AI says when your emotional influence stop. No, no, sorry. What am I reading? Okay, there we go. So I'm going to share some psychological terms and concepts and explain them as they were shared earlier. And these are the points of kind of like, how do I say it? Like wondering about psychological autonomy within human systems and how at some point you got to attain, like, reach that self governance without any emotional or intrusion. And at some point, it's the raw you looking at the raw world, and it's like the unknown self and the unknown world have there's nothing to fear. The known self and the known world, they know that it's simulated. That's the thing. Part of us knows that if this world is real, there has to be an unreal one. Everything's dualistic. But beyond that duality, there could be infinite, and beyond that infinity, it's unknown, or the void veils the systematic. So these are the psychological terms and concepts. I'm reading this. Emotional enmeshment, a family dynamic in which personal boundaries are blurred and a parent's emotions, fears, and needs are repeatedly imposed on the child, limiting the child's autonomy. Two, boundary diffusion, boundary violations, the absence or repeated crossing of healthy emotional and psychological boundaries, especially regarding how one is spoken to and emotionally influenced. Emotional parentification, a role reversal where the child becomes responsible for absorbing, managing, or stabilizing the parent's emotional state. Wow. So because the parent acts emotional in front of the child doesn't have a chance to act emotional. That's crazy. The child acts like the adult. Oh my God. Four, emotional invalidation, repeated dismissal, minimization, or overriding of a person's thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. Anxiety projection, the unconscious transfer of a parent's fears, worries, or panic onto the child. Psychological intrusion, involvement in another person's inner world, thoughts, decisions, emotions in a controlling or invasive way. Differentiation of self, in brackets, Bowen Family Systems Theory, the process of developing a clear sense of identity, independent thinking, and emotional separation from family members. Individuation, developmental psychology, the formation of an autonomous adult self, including independent decision making and self trust. That's the crazy thing. Sometimes, you might be in a individual position, being responsible for your outer realms and everything, but it could be that you don't trust yourself. When you don't trust yourself, the viewpoints or the emotions of others or what's outside of you regulates you. So you regulate yourself, or something else regulates yourself, or you try to stay unknown, but then you realize, life force moves. Anyways, so then it says autonomy suppression, patterns of control or influence that limit a person's ability to make self-directed choices. Chronic emotional overstimulation, long-term exposure to emotionally intense input, in brackets criticism, fear, worry, that disrupts emotional regulation. Sorry, I'll read it again. Long-term exposure to emotionally intense input, criticism, fear, worry, that disrupts emotional. Yeah, so if, let's say there's a child developing and the parent keeps scolding it or disrupting it, or the child's having fun and the parents like stop it and go do something useful or something. You know what I mean? And it's like in that moment where suddenly, it's like the person was doing something they wanted to do with their own autonomy. What their autonomy was suppressed. Now this is not a big deal. This is just in the inner realms. It's abstract, technically. Anyways, I'm gonna go to the next one. Emotional contagion, the unconscious transfer of emotional states from one person to another over repeated interactions. Yeah, that means if somebody's like depressed or pessimistic, you constantly meet them, you're gonna start being pessimistic. Makes sense. I mean, because you're getting patterns, right? You're creating brain patterns that are that way of thinking. Assertive boundary setting, the clear, non aggressive communication of limits regarding behavior and emotional interaction. There you go. AI says one sentence summary: an adult child emerging from emotional enmeshment and anxiety projection, reclaiming autonomy through differentiation, individuation, and assertive boundary setting. So guys, yeah, it's like I'm telling you, it is this whole thing of like, psychological autonomy, self-governance, not having any other emotions or things from outside of you interfering you, trying to figure out what your original self is. But you're going to see that the original awareness to reality is not conditional. The conditions are found within the presence of your being. So you are the witness of the various conditions as much as you notice the conditions or even identify as a body that is in a condition. So it is a matter of the quality of what it is. The awareness to existence is not the same quality as the what actual existence is. Do you see? And yet the brain simulates. It's fascinating. Anyways, folks, God truly knows. The simulated return to the original. For religious people, they're returning to the system admin. For secular people, you are in some sense living the most advanced, the greatest you can while you can. Honor is found in how far the vision is, and beyond self service, you'll discover species service. Oh my God. This is a class of uncharted, unexplored honor. Not unexplored, like back in the day it was there, but it's always been nationalistic and group oriented. There has never been an honor for the human species. Like every person who comes and gives a lecture says, in honor of the greatness of the human species, in the presence of the greatest power. Do like, and then they share an incredible useful strategy for humanity to advance. you Anyways, folks, thank you for listening. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful, and the most advanced. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. The system admin is beyond the world room. As the greatest of wisdom is to go directly to the system admin. Have faith that the world knows what it's doing before you got here, and it even knows what everything knows what it's doing with you being here as a being in existence. It's important to remember we're alive in a world beyond the limits of the human fathoming. So the context is not fixed. It's a changing world. The context is not is an edgeless world. The context is, in some sense, the possibility of infinite dimensions. The context is the recognition that all manifestation has one original source. There's four ways that reality, to me, can be fathomed. But to me, we're in the sector of Earth. We're on the Earth that there's a singular system admin. That's the divine agency call. That makes sense. That means there's these, technically, based on my understanding, there is three other Earths. There's three other parallel universes, three other worlds, where there's a divine agency. So we're in the world where it's a singular divine agency, yet we experience in front of our eyes a world where there's a dualistic agency. There could be a dualistic, a parallel universe of birth with a dualistic divine agency. It could be an infinite divine agency, or it could be a void, like a field space like divine agency. But we're in this corner of this square of reality, or square of manifestation. So God truly knows. Let us be humble that no idea can contain that which is beyond ideas. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful, the most advanced. Thank you for listening.